The siege of Poonch from 1947 and 1948 stands as one of the most protracted, complex, and symbolically powerful episodes of the First Indo-Pakistan War, a conflict born out of the violent upheaval of partition and the unresolved status of princely states in the subcontinent. When British paramountcy lapsed in August 1947, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir found itself at the center of competing national visions. Maharaja Hari Singh initially attempted to remain independent, but the situation deteriorated rapidly in October 1947 when tribal militias from Pakistan North-West Frontier Province, supported by elements within Pakistan, invaded Kashmir. Their advance through Muzaffarabad, Baramulla, and towards Srinagar triggered a chain of events that reshaped the region's future. While the defense of Srinagar has been received primary attention in popular narratives, the struggle for Poonch became a parallel theater of immense strategic and moral significance. Poonch was not merely a remote town hill, it was a district with complex demographic and political profile. Predominantly Muslim, but ruled by a Hindu Maharaja, the region had experienced unrest even before the tribal invasion, including local rebellions influenced by communal tensions and political grievances, as tribal Lashkars swept into western Jammu and Kashmir in late 1947. Poonch became both a target and a symbol. Controlling Poonch would enable the invaders to consolidate their hold over western districts, threaten communications with Jammu, and potentially encircle Indian positions further east. By November 1947, Poonch town had effectively become isolated, roads were cut off, surrounding hills were occupied by hostile forces, and thousands of civilians sought refuge within the shrinking perimeter defended by a small garrison of Jammu and Kashmir state forces and newly inducted Indian Army units. At the center of the defense stood Brigadier Pritam Singh, a resolute and resourceful officer, who would later be remembered as the savior of Poonch. His leadership during the siege was defined not by dramatic maneuvers but by sustained endurance, improvisation, and psychological resilience. The defenders, numbering only a few thousand at most, faced attackers estimated to be several times their strength. The geography of Poonch, narrow valleys hemmed in by steep ridges, offered both advantages and vulnerabilities. While the surrounding heights allowed attackers to harass the town with fire, the defenders could establish layered positions, trenches, and bunkers that made direct assault costly. The siege that unfolded was not a single climatic battle, but a relentless test of willpower marked by skirmishes, artillery duels, sniping, and constant uncertainty. One of the defining features of Siege of Poonch was the humanitarian dimension. Unlike purely military outposts, Poonch contained tens of thousands of civilians who had fled from surrounding villages. These refugees brought with them trauma, fear, and limited supplies. Food stocks rapidly dwindled. The specter of starvation loomed over both soldiers and civilians. In this context, the defense of Poonch transcended tactical calculations and became an existential struggle. The morale of the population and the garrisons were intertwined. Civilian volunteers assisted in constructing fortifications, carrying ammunition, and supporting medical efforts. Women cooked and rationed scarce provisions. Children and elderly took shelter in makeshift bunkers as shells and bullets tore through the outskirts of the town. The siege blurred the boundary between combatant and non-combatant, clearly a shared experience of endurance. Logistics quickly emerged as the central challenge, with all ground routes severed. The only viable link between Poonch and the rest of Indian-held territory was through the air. The Indian forces undertook a daring, sustained air supply operation using Dakota aircraft, the workhorse transport planes of that era. These aircraft flew through treacherous Himalayan weather, often under the threat of enemy fire, to drop or land with essential supplies. The construction and maintenance of a functioning airstrip under the siege conditions was itself an extraordinary achievement. Carved out with limited equipment and manpower, the strip allowed Dakotas to land, unload rations, ammunition, and medical supplies, and evacuate the wounded. Over the course of the siege, hundreds of sorties were flown, delivering hundreds of tons of supplies. This air bridge was among the earliest large-scale examples of sustained air logistics in independent India's military history and demonstrated the decisive role of air power in mountain warfare. While defenders held the perimeter, the broad strategic situation evolved. The Indian Army, newly reorganized after partition, was simultaneously fighting on multiple fronts in Jammu and Kashmir. Securing the Kashmir Valley, protecting Jammu, and stabilizing other sectors consumed significant resources for months. Poonch remained a beleaguered enclave, its fate uncertain, yet the Indian High Command understood that abandoning Poonch would carry severe military and political consequences. Militarily, it would coincide valuable territory and embolden opposing forces. Politically, it would undermine the narrative of accession and weaken India's position in any future negotiations. The siege thus acquired symbolic importance beyond its geographic size. By the mid-1948s, as Indian forces gradually regained initiative in various sectors, attention turned to relieving Poonch through a coordinated ground operation. The plan that emerged, known as Operation Easy, aimed to break through from the direction of Rajouri and establish a land corridor to town. This was no simple undertaking. The terrain between Rajouri and Poonch was rugged, cut by ridges, forests, and narrow passes. Opposing forces were entrenched in commanding positions. Advancing columns had to contend with ambushes, mines, and artillery fire while navigating roads that were often more than tracks. The operation required careful coordination between infantry, artillery, engineers, and logistical units. As Indian troops pushed forward in November 1948, the defenders inside Poonch prepared to support the breakout effort. The culmination came in a series of intense engagements that saw Indian forces clearing key heights and securing vital approaches. On 22nd of November 1948, the link up was achieved. After nearly a year of isolation, Poonch was connected by land to Indian Hill Territory. The lifting of the siege marked not only a tactical success but also a profound physiological victory. The town had endured encirclement, shortages, and continuous threat, yet it hadn't fallen. The relief validated the strategy of sustained defense combined with eventual counteroffensive actions. The siege of Poonch also shaped the eventual ceasefire line that would later be formalized as the LOC, or better known as the Line of Control. When the United Nations brokered ceasefire came into effect on January 1st, 1949, the region was effectively partitioned. Parts of the wider Poonch district remained under Pakistani control, while Poonch town and adjacent areas stayed with India. The outcome reflected the military realities created by operations such as the defense and the relief of Poonch. Thus, the siege had long-term geopolitical consequences, influencing the cartographic and political landscape of the subcontinent for decades to come. Beyond strategy and territory, the siege occupies a distinct place in military memory because it exemplifies endurance under siege conditions in mountainous terrains. Unlike swift battles decided by maneuver and surprise, the siege of Poonch was a test of stamina, leadership, and morale. Brigadier Pritam Singh's role, though later complicated by controversies in his career, became emblematic of steadfast command under extreme pressure. The Dakota pilots and crews demonstrated courage of a different kind, flying into uncertain conditions to sustain an isolated garrison. Civilians, too, were integral actors in this drama. Their resilience reinforced the defenders' determination. In military historiography, the siege underscores several enduring lessons. First, geography can transform a modest town into strategic fortress. Second, logistics, often overlooked in popular accounts, can determine collapse or survival. Third, morale and leadership are decisive multipliers in asymmetric conditions. Finally, limited tactical objectives can carry disproportionate political weight in conflicts where legitimacy and perception matter as much as ground gained. The siege of Poonch illustrates how a local defense can shape national narratives and international diplomacy. Today, the story of Poonch is woven into the broader history of the First Indo-Pakistani War, sometimes overshadowed by many famous engagements but less significant. The valley that once echoed with artillery and aircraft engine now bears the marks of history in quieter forms. Memorials, stories, and the enduring presence of military units stationed along a contested frontier. The siege remains a testament to the idea that wars are not decided solely by sweeping offensives, but also by the capacity to hold, endure, and outlast adversity. In the harsh winter of 1947-1948, amid fog-covered ridges and rain-soaked trenches, Poonch became more than a town under siege. It became a symbol of defiance in a time of national uncertainty and upheaval.